I'm going to start with a question. What motivates you? Or more specifically, who do you do what you do for? When assessing the things I've achieved over the years, I'm intrigued by the correlation between what motivates me to do it and the level of my success and my happiness. Since leaving school, I've had to make two big decisions about the direction of my life. Both of them were fueled by very different motivations. One had me at a low point of falling asleep on a bathroom floor, and the other had me standing on top of a mountain. The first decision came when I'd left university and I had to choose my career, or more simply put, the direction of my life. I let my motivation be dictated by the pursuit of money, perceived security, and what I thought other people thought I should do. Most people I knew had gone to the city and were trying to forge a career behind a desk, and I blindly followed, thinking, that's what I should do. I got a good job at a great firm, and as time passed, it looked like I was on the path to success. I had pay rises, got more responsibilities, I got promotions, and by the age of 33, I had moved from graduate trainee to partner. I had a car, a flat, a girlfriend, and from an outside perspective, it may have looked like I was successful. But internally, that couldn't have been further from the truth. I was unhappy, unfulfilled, and deeply unsatisfied. I started looking for ways of escapism. And for me, that meant going to the bar. More and more nights were spent in the pub, my days became hazy, and at work, my performance started to slip. Then there was one weeknight, I was out with friends, and when 3 o'clock in the morning came, I thought, it's probably better go straight to work in a taxi rather than home to bed. The next morning, I peeled myself off the shower room floor at work, leaned against the sink, and literally took a long, hard look at myself in the mirror and didn't like what I saw looking back. I'll go as far as to say I was a little bit ashamed. I realized I had to change the way I was living my life, or it was going to potentially end in disaster. I had to admit to myself that all the decisions I'd made up to that point in life were based on what I thought other people thought I should do. And I hadn't taken the time to think what I'd like to do, how I'd like to live my life, how I could be the best version of myself. The success I was aiming for was dictated by possessions, titles, and people's acceptance. And that's not how I wanted to live my life. I had to start thinking about what was important to me. And to do that, I realized that I had to change the way I was motivated from the external to the internal. I spent weeks trying to define what it is I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And in that process, I thought back to when was the last time I could remember being truly happy and fulfilled. And it was at the end of a solo 240-kilometer run through Vietnam. And I started to ask myself, could I make that my career? I'd endlessly watched adventurers on television and saw them doing what I wanted to do, but I never let myself think of it as a credible career choice for me. The old me wouldn't allow it. But then I thought, to be an adventurer, a successful adventurer, you have to be motivated by personal goals and driven by passion. And that's how I wanted to live my life. So I thought, on that moment, I'm going to become an adventurer. Planning a life based on your passion is really exciting. I wanted my first adventure to be built around running, a passion I'd had since as long as I could remember. I then made the decision that if I was going to end my career, I had to be on an adventure for at least 365 days. So a quick calculation with the 30 days I thought I could run a day came to 11,000 kilometers. I also wanted to include other passions in what I was doing. So with foreign travel and experiencing new cultures in mind, I turned to a map of the world and conceived my first epic adventure. I was going to run from Canada to Argentina, a total distance of 17,000 kilometers across 2 continents and through 14 different countries. To make it more challenging, I was going to do it alone and with no dedicated support. Everything I needed for that adventure would have to be pushed in a baby stroller. It took me a few months to put this plan into action because the sheer scale of what I was trying to achieve was slightly terrifying, but I also still cared what people might think. When I finally had the courage to tell my boss I was quitting, his reaction wasn't anger and disappointment, but was understanding and encouragement. When I told my father, he simply said, "If you have to go, you have to go." Actually, most people were pretty supportive. And in that moment, I realized that all the people that I thought cared about what I was doing actually didn't really care that much at all, because they all had their own lives and their own worries to worry about. Okay, there were the naysayers, the people who felt obliged to tell me that, oh, what you're doing is impossible, or oh, you'll probably die. But my new internal motivation told me not to listen to them, and actually to use that as a way to prove them wrong. And also, I realized that when people tell you you can't do something, in most cases it's them just projecting their own fears onto you. So on the 15th of August, 2014, 2 weeks after I'd finished work, I was standing in Vancouver with one goal: to run 17,000 kilometers to Argentina. First stage through America was a little bit of a steep learning curve, as I learnt to run about a marathon a day and then have to find somewhere to sleep at night and to get food. I was burning about 6,000 calories a day. But as time went by, I got more confident, and these little everyday challenges started to get a little bit easier. When I got to Mexico, it got a little bit more daunting. Everything was in a different language. But luckily, I've been listening to audio tapes about Spanish across America. The distances also got a lot bigger between civilizations, but my passion drove me forward. When I got to the end of Baja California, I had to learn how to ask people for help, and I managed to hitchhike across the Sea of Cortez on this boat. When I got across the Sea of Cortez, I ran down through El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and into Nicaragua. It was here I had my first health scare. I was 40 kilometers into a 70-kilometer day when I stopped to go to the loo and started peeing blood. I had to run another 30 kilometers pushing my pram in quite a lot of pain. But when I got to the town, I found with a combination of a doctor and my determination, not only was I back on the road, but a couple of days later, I was boarding down an active volcano. Costa Rica and Panama were quite humid for a wee boy from Scotland, but knowing that the end of the first part of my trip was in Yavisia gave me the courage and the kind of drive to push on. And I arrived in Yavisia. This is where the Pan American finishes. An ill-advised swim and meant I ended up with a parasite called Giardia, which I'm still dealing with today. And I couldn't push my baby stroller through the jungle, so I had to navigate my way along the coast and across to Colombia. South America brought new challenges, mountains and deserts. One of the things I'm most gutted about is due to a postal issue in Quito, I missed Volcan Cotopaxi erupting by 1 day. I would have literally been running past it as it erupted. Distraught about that. When I got to northern Peru, very luckily, these two chaps gave me a police escort across the Sechura Desert after I'd received an email from friends saying that they had been held up at gunpoint by bandits and shot at. So that was quite reassuring. When I arrived in Chile, I had to run 700 kilometers across the Atacama Desert, the world's driest non-polar desert. Then I arrived at the Andes, my last big obstacle. I had run 15,000 kilometers and then had to climb up to 4,830 meters, 20 meters higher than anywhere in Europe and higher than I had ever been. As I stood there, I felt like I could see the whole world in front of me. And in that moment, I realized that I was happy, I was fulfilled, but most importantly, my motivation to achieve more was bigger than anything. When I'd reached the pinnacle of my old career, my motivation was to do just enough to stay where I was. Now, my internal motivation was to see myself grow and become a stronger version of myself. In that moment, I realized that success is not something we should aim for, but it's a way we should live our life every day. Rather than aim for something big in the future, we should try and be successful at every single little thing we do. And by doing that, we have a chance to live life the best way we can. The final push on that journey was equivalent to running Land's End to John O'Groats in 28 days, averaging 56 kilometers a day. I wasn't pushing to get to the finish, but I was craving to achieve more, push myself harder, because all the limitations I put on myself in the past had disappeared. By following my dreams and my passions, I had empowered myself to believe in myself and what I was capable of. It was on this final push that I received an email from my mother. When I quit my career, I kind of thought maybe I'd let my parents down, but she simply said that they were proud of me and what I'd achieved. By simply being me and doing what I wanted, I had made them proud. On the 30th of December 2015, I ran into Buenos Aires. I'd run 17,000 kilometers. It had taken me 367 days, averaging 46.5 kilometers a day. I'd worn through 17 pairs of shoes, grown an epic beard, and raised £25,000 for charity. It was more than I could ever have thought of achieving when I started. And people ask me if I ever thought about failing, or if I ever wanted to give up. And the simple answer is no. From the moment I started adventuring in Vancouver, I've had a sole drive to push myself forward. If times ever get tough, I simply sit down wherever I am, remember the life I used to lead, and that's all I need to stand back up again. If I could go, my career continues, but my presentation doesn't. My career as an adventurer continues, and over the last couple of years, I've run across the Alps, I've cycled across South America, I've starred on TV show, and I've been trekking with camels in Mongolia. And that is all just through my unwavering internal motivation. If I could go back and do it all again, I would tell myself, do what you love, know where you want to go, and work harder than anyone else to get there. Success is something you need to define on your terms, and you have to be motivated by your passion and what drives you to happiness and success. Because if you do that, you have the opportunity to be the best version of yourself. Over the last 3.5 years, I've adventured 23,500 kilometers in 25 different countries. I can only imagine what I would have achieved if I could take back the 12 years I sat behind a desk. So next time you have to make a big life decision, just ask yourself, who am I doing this for? Thank you.